Okay, this is going to be the first video for planning question 4 for the AQA paper, the language comparison. Okay, the first thing you know is you have to compare source 3. And if it's source 3, you remember that source 3 asked you to talk about the emotions, thoughts and feelings in a piece of dramatic nonfiction. And one of the secret things about source 3, not secret, but one of the things you know you need to do is talk about change over the course of the article. So one of the things you know source 3 will always have, if you're thinking about language comparison, is emotive language. It has to, because you were just asked a question about this very thing, emotive language. The other thing we want to think about is what other types of rhetorical devices will be used probably in source 3. We'll probably have something like exaggeration. We'll probably have something like simile or metaphor, or any number of those literary devices that create emotion in the reader. These are the rhetorical devices that we think will be in this article. The other thing that we're looking for, of course, is imagery. And at Langdon Park, we're also looking for contrast. So we're going to look always in source 3 for emotive language. Then we're going to look for one other rhetorical device. In addition, imagery and contrast. The source, you have the choice between source 2 and source 1. The source I would choose always is source 1, because source 1 is an information text. So you will have language that's not emotive. On the contrary, it's going to be informational language. So here we're probably going to see facts, statistics. We might get opinions of people. All of these are things we'll look for. In addition, of course, we will be looking for imagery and contrasts as well. Okay? So let's see if we can do that in the first source, source 3. Okay? Now, we've already read it, but now we're going to have to go through it again and find an example of emotive language, one other technique, imagery, and contrast, okay? And I'm going to keep this here, and I'm going to say source 3. We'll start with emotive language. And we're going to need quotes. Device 2, imagery, and contrast. Okay, let me do source 3 quickly. The density of night, the vast expanse of crystal stars glimmering in a flat black sky. The vast expanse of crystal stars glimmering in a... That's a great image right away, so I'm going to I don't want to waste time. That's imagery, so I'm going to take that quote right now. The vast expanse of crystal stars glimmering. Now, remember, this is language analysis, so it's what words you're going to really focus on when you're analyzing, and I can see so much in that right away. So I've got imagery taken care of. Let's keep going. Like a tarpaulin drawn over us. I love it. I could even add that like simile, but I'm just going to take note of it and keep moving. I love the desert, its immensity, its silence, save for the wind and the flicking of beasts' tails. But I did not love the frustration I felt towards my guide Muhammad. Some of the towns we passed through were squalid. The air was almost brittle. I could grind it between my teeth. There's the emotive language I was looking for right away. Squalid, brittle, grind my teeth. I see my emotional language right away. Let's keep going. Diesel belched from lorries and buses. Butchered meat hung in the heat, blackened by flies. In ancient Persia, sesame seed was used as an antibacterial agent. I wondered if it meant anything here, or were they immune to it? I'd eaten no meat since Lebanon. I can see the contrast between the beauty of the night, the beauty of the desert, and the disgusting diesel and meat. So, the contrast I'm getting is between the night and the desert, which are beautiful, and the meat and the cars, which are disgusting. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. Occasionally I called out that I would like to stop, to walk about, take photographs, but Muhammad grew impatient and told his colleague to keep moving, onwards, penetrating the desert, traveling the roads in a solid old Mercedes, similar to Michael's dusty blue 1972 model back at the farm. The similarity of the car helped me feel closer to my husband, whom I had not spoken to in days. I pined for him, but was not unhappy. Whenever it was possible, I kept the window open and felt the wind burning, drying me up, shriveling my skin to an old prune. Burning, drying, shriveling. That's a rule of that's a list of 3, so it's a rule of 3. And I'm just going to write those down. Burning, burning, drying, shriveling. Burning, drying, shriveling. Great. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 things that I'm going to look at in source 3. Now I got to do my source 1. Source 1 is going to be information, facts, statistics, livestock, agriculture, that's a fact. So change people's diets to reduce greenhouse gases and the planet can support more people. In fact, it will quite easily deal with the 9.2 billion at which the population is currently forecast to peak in about 40 years' time. Right away, I get a statistic and a fact. The stat is 9.2 billion in 40 years. The fact is cows, pigs, sheep, etc., that quote, produces more greenhouse than train, truck, car, plane put together. And, eventually what we're going to talk about is the effect of all these things. It is hard to analyze statistics and facts, but I think that's so huge, and that's not that very long from now. So that's a huge population in not very long, and that means the writer wants to shock me, to make me see how big a deal this is. This is surprising because we think that pollution is actually created from cars, but actually animals are much worse. And again, it's the put together that really makes that shocking. Okay, well, we have that. Let's keep moving. We want some imagery, and we want contrast. Okay, so let's keep going. If the omnivores you convert are the usual guzzlers of cheap, mass-produced meat, all the better, because the production is particularly demanding on fossil fuels. So it's better if you're a vegetarian, right? Nope. Vegetarian diet is better. However, it is argued that a rich world vegetarian would not consume much less of the plant's resources than the average meat eater. Meat substitutes, deforestation in the developing world is a major issue in climate change. I think that's an image. I don't know, though. Let's keep going. But as a committed meat eater, I have to acknowledge that if I want my grandchildren ever to enjoy a perfect steak, I must address my habits now. All this animal munching cannot go. Meat is developed. Food is responsible for 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions, and a large portion of that is from livestock farming. This is tons of facts. the main reason for the world, okay, which is why I'm trying to embrace the idea of dropping meat once a week. 1 day off the red stuff. Not so great a hardship. You know what I'm going to go for is the image of the red stuff. 1 day off the red stuff. The image of meat. I don't know if that's very convincing, but I'm going to go for red stuff for the image. Contrast. The contrast is between meat and vegetarian diet, I think. Yeah. So, what we have here, if we take a look, let me just raise this up a bit, is to show you that if you choose source 3, you know you'll always have emotional language as a go-to. And you can always compare that to something like statistics and facts right away. You will have a literary device in the source 3. And you probably won't in source 1, but you might. Maybe there's a rhetorical question or a simile, but definitely you get statistics and facts. And in fact, that one paragraph has tons more that we could use. Imagery will always be in source 3. Hopefully you can find an image in source 1. This red stuff isn't very good, but I can still build a paragraph on it. Contrast, you just need to find in source 3, remember there's always change. There'll always be something different at the beginning than at the end. There'll always be contrast. Something big and something small, something changing. In source 1 there may or not, but contrast is something you could find. And obviously in this source it is that aspect of meat versus vegetarianism. This gets us into 4 paragraphs, which is what we want to aim at for an A star for this question. It needs planning, it needs quotes, as you see. But if you get quick, and if you always choose, well, you have to choose source 3, but if you start getting into the habit of picking source 1, once you picked your 4 quotes, in the next video I'm going to show you how to construct a paragraph and construct the comparison, and then you'll be on your way to getting at least 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 marks on this question.